Alright, welcome back, dudes. My name's Kevin Duty, and we've got a knife review today. We're talking about the Civivi Altus. This thing is pretty freaking cool. I just got it in a trade recently. So, yeah, we're gonna take a look at this thing. This is one of a few Civivi button locks that are available out there. Civivi went on kind of a button lock craze in the last 6 months. They came out with the Cogent, the Conspirator, the Altus, and the Chevalier. And before that, there wasn't a whole lot of budget-friendly button locks out there. So, this is a really cool thing. It made button locks more accessible to people that have a smaller knife budget. So let's go over some specs. Just right off the bat, this is kind of I would call it a smaller knife. So keep that in mind. You'll see here when I give you the specs, and we'll do some size comparisons to help you get the feel for it. So we have an overall length of 7.12 inches. That is, it's about 7 1/16 ish. We have a blade length of a little over 3 inches, 3 1/16 maybe. The actual cutting edge is exactly 3 inches. The blade thickness here is 0.11 inches. The blade material, blade steel, is Nitro V. You can kind of see it right down there, barely. Nitro V is it's a great budget steel. It's kind of right on par with 14C28N. And I have not sharpened this thing yet. The guy I got it from put a nice edge on it for me. But I have handled Nitro V in the past, and it's a perfectly good steel. So we got a drop point blade. Really nice, kind of thin profile on this knife. Comes to a pretty fine point. This thing is pretty slicey. It's not like incredibly thin at the edge, but it's this thing slices really well. The handle length, just the handle, is 4.15 inches. We got G10 here for the handles. A little bit of texture there. I think it's more like probably a peel ply type of texture. So you have a little bit of grip there, nothing too crazy. And the weight on this thing is 3.1 ounces. Let's do some size comparisons before we move on. The knife that I have here that is most like in size is probably the Rat 2. So here we can see they're pretty much the same. Let's look at some Benchmades next. We got the Benchmade Bug Out, the Benchmade Griptilian. There you go. And how about some Spydercos? We got the Manix 2 and the PM2. Much smaller than both. And how about another Civivi Praxis. Much smaller than the Praxis. And how about another button lock, the Orion Solaris. So you can see it's a pretty small knife. I've been on kind of a big knife craze recently, and it feels good to have just a nice, smaller, compact, light, slicey blade back in the collection. This thing is fairly light. Well, it's not super light. I mean, it's 3 ounces, but the carry profile is very, very slim. And this thing carries super well in the pocket with a nice deep carry pocket clip. It's not inset, but we do have flat-headed screws there, so you got nothing poking out in there, catching on the seam of your pocket. The pocket clip does come up into kind of a bill type thing. I do feel it when I'm gripping the knife, but it's definitely not really a hot spot. It's not poking me. But if I was to give my honest opinion on this clip, I don't really like how Civivi does their clips. It's too much of a swoop here. You can have that much lower and still have it go in and out of the pocket super easily. For example, this MXG clip, it barely swoops up, but it's just shaped in a way that this thing is easy to get in and out of my pocket, even if I'm wearing my Carhartts that have, you know, a thicker than usual seam on them. This thing goes in and out just fine. So that swoop up there is just not really needed. I hope that one day Civivi changes that, but we'll see. Another thing that I have never been a huge fan of in Civivi knives is they have their logo here, the letter C. And on this knife particularly, it doesn't really bother me because it's blacked out, and it's not very noticeable. They are, however, very good about not putting any billboarding on the actual blade, which I really like. It just gives it a really nice kind of clean look. Especially in this design, you know, it's already such a sleek kind of aerodynamic looking knife that I'm glad that they don't have anything on the blade, and the pivot logo there is pretty subdued. Let's talk about ergos. This thing is pretty comfortable. It has some jimping here on the spine. It's not my favorite type of jimping. I usually prefer something finer. For example, we can look on the griptilian here. I usually like jimping that's fine like this. It's just a little more grippy. But this is plenty grippy. And again, this is not really a knife that you're going to be really bearing down on and you know, doing really hard cutting tasks. This is more of just a blade to have in your pocket for opening up mail, packages, breaking down some cardboard if you need to, or you know, just light cutting tasks like that. So the jimping doesn't matter too much. The ergonomics, like I said, are pretty good. You can kind of choke up a little bit. There's not really much of a space here for your finger, but you can grip it up here. But back here, I think this is the best way to hold the knife back here. I can get a full 4 fingers on it, so that's great. Even have a little bit extra room if your hands happen to be a little bigger than mine. Let's talk about the action. It's pretty good. Mine in particular has some pretty good lock stick on the button here, or maybe button stick, I guess. But that should wear out. This knife is only a month old, and the previous owner didn't carry it too much, so I'm expecting that will wear out. But aside from that, the action on this thing is really nice. The detent is just really good. You barely put any pressure on that thumb stud, and it's just popping out. It's super easy. Really easy to reverse flick too. You don't really have to worry about getting your finger perfectly placed on that thumb stud. You kind of just feel where it is and flick, and it opens. So this knife is really fidgety. It's really fun to mess around with. I've pretty much just constantly been doing this since I got it. So action, I would say, very good. When you push down the button, you have a totally free swinging blade, as you can see. So you can also push in the button and kind of flick it out like this. So there's a couple different ways to open the knife, which I like. You know, I gotta say, button locks are really becoming one of my favorite locking mechanisms. I don't think they're the strongest locking mechanism, but they're definitely plenty strong, and for especially a knife like this, it just makes it so fun. You can get this thing out of your pocket, flick it open, do your cutting task, and put it away just super easily and quickly. I mean, it's just it's great, and it's fun. Let's see, what else? Let's take a look here. We have full liners. There's some milling inside for weight relief, but they are full. We have a tiny little standoff here for you can loop a lanyard through that if you want to hang a lanyard off the back of this thing. Left-handed use, super easy. You're just pushing the button with your pointer finger instead of your thumb. Man, this knife is just so easy to operate. It's very fun. The only other button locks by Civivi that I've handled is the Cogent, And compared to the Cogent, this thing, I would say it's just about as smooth as the Cogent, but I like the design on this a little better. If you go, I don't have the Cogent here with me, but if you go take a look at it online, it's just it's a bigger knife, and the design is just not as sleek, and it just doesn't look quite as good to me. The Conspirator, however, I think does look really good. I want to get my hands on one of those eventually. And the Chevalier, the other button lock, is a sheep's foot blade. So if you're looking for a button lock with a sheep's foot blade, that would be the one for you. Overall, I really like this little knife. It's a good price. They come in at $72. So I think that's a great price for getting Nitro V steel, a really smooth button lock, G10 full steel liners. I like the finish on the blade. It's a bead blasted finish. I don't own a lot of bead blasted finished blades, and it's really just a nice change. Most of my knives are either tumbled or coated, but it's really just I think it's a nice change. This knife just feels refreshing for me. Like I said, I'm used to carrying big bulky knives, and this just feels really quick. Feels quick, sharp, pointy, and just overall good. I don't really have anything negative to say about it, except the clip is not my favorite type of clip, and I have my lock stick, but I don't know if they're all going to arrive with some lock stick, or if it's just a few, or just mine in particular. But just be aware that if you buy this knife and you feel that lock stick, that it will go away over time. What's happening is, Pokey, what are you doing? My dog's freaking out. What lock stick is you can see that plunge lock, how it locks into place is it pops out and falls into a little area on the tang, and that keeps it solid. When you go to close it, that tolerance there is real tight still when it's brand new. So that little resistance that you feel, that's those two metal surfaces rubbing against each other. And over time, even steel wears away eventually. Over time, as you just push this button over and over again, it will wear itself out a smoother area for it to travel on. So it'll go away eventually. Just keep using it, and you got nothing to worry about. Having a little bit of lock stick is better than having a lockup that is not totally solid. If that tolerance in there wasn't as tight as it is, you might have some blade play. So that's about it. This is just a nice quick little review, and keep in mind that I did start a Patreon page. I know I don't have too many subscribers yet, but I figured maybe there was one or two of you out there that would want to help support the channel. All proceeds from the Patreon are going right back into the channel to fund things like a better microphone, a light box so that I can take good pictures of the knives for the thumbnails, things like that, and some knives too. I can't afford to keep buying knives to have on the channel. That's just not a sustainable thing to do. So go to my Patreon and just take a look at what the tiers are. There's different tiers for different amounts, and they all have different rewards that come with those tiers. Obviously, the higher the tier, the better the perks are going to be. There's definitely going to be giveaways that are Patreon only. That will start once I have, once I reach a certain amount of patrons. It wouldn't really make sense for me to start doing giveaways there if I only have 3 Patreons or patrons. So, yes, once I get a good enough amount of patrons, there will be definitely giveaways on there and other cool stuff. So, check it out if you want. If you don't, you just want to keep watching my videos, that's perfectly fine with me. And, that'll about do it. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next one. Adios.